your host, Paul Sir. Good morning. Welcome to Hoop City with Paul Sir, along with Josh Fenwick. Josh, how are you today?
Oh, Paul, feeling fresh as a daisy, as mentioned numerous amount of times on the Triple S this morning. So feeling good.
Living the dream and fresh as a daisy. I think I associate both of those with you, Josh.
Yeah, amped up to talk about the trade deadline.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was entertaining. It was entertaining. We also have our other special guest, Manesh. Welcome this morning. Great to have you here.
Thank you. So it's I love being here. Obviously, talking basketball. Paul, such a great honor. Obviously, on this beautiful Saturday morning, weather's gotten a little bit warmer, easier to wake up. Look outside the window. Not that much sunlight. It's a little gloomy outside.
Is it?
It is.
But are you gloomy inside? That's my big question.
Love this time of year. We got
Sunshine.
The Olympics. We got NBA happening. We got football happening. We got storylines in sports happening all over the world. And it's like, this is the best time to be alive.
It is. I totally agree. It's such a dynamic time. It was such an interesting week. I thought about how do you describe the trade deadline this year, and I think that's the best word I could come up with is interesting, because the blockbusters that I think a lot of people focused way too much time and energy on didn't happen, but it sets up what will happen in the future, and there's certainly a lot of interesting post-trade deadline conversation about why Giannis is still a Buck and Ja Morant is still a Grizzly. So we're going to delve into that today. We have a great show lined up after the first segment where we go 3 from deep plus 1 today. We have Doug McLean on. Doug is going to be our community champion, and Doug has guest hosted the show. I have worked closely with Doug for many, many years. Have the privilege of working with Doug because he's such a pro at game broadcasting with the Edmonton Stingers. He, along with Mark Migeot, are also the voice of the Pandas and the Bears, both in football and basketball. Doug does a lot of international broadcasting, but the reason I selected Doug as our community champion is because what he's done in the local sports community, not just behind the microphone, but in his work as a consultant helping organizations clarify their mission and vision. And he's done a lot of work for local sports organizations and helped them to become more effective, along with being a player himself and coaching in the community. So we'll have Doug on in our second and third segments. But why don't we jump right into what our poll question is today, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so our poll question today, if you want to vote on it, you can go to our X account, at Hoop City Show. All one word, you'll find us. Poll question today, who improved the most due to the trades made? Your options are the Celtics, the Cavaliers, the Timberwolves, or the Jazz. Where do you come out on this, Paul?
Well, Paul is, and he's a little biased.
I'm aware he's a Timberwolves fan.
Yeah. Do you think he's upset that they didn't get Giannis? Because they look like they were trying to do everything.
Why don't you ask him? Don't ask me.
Fair.
No, I don't know if they're upset. Maybe I think that the Wolves, along with a number of other franchises, have plans in the offseason. But I think also, to me, a lot of NBA franchises right now are going through an existential crisis. What is a trade anymore? Like, what do you really want to accomplish with a trade? And it seems to me that the pattern that emerged from the trades this year, Manesh and Josh, was that it's more surgical. It's less blow it up and bring in the big guy and we're going to turn things around with the superstar. Giannis is hurt all the time. Ja is hurt all the time, and he's a head case. So, I think it's going to be real interesting in the offseason what happens with Giannis. I love Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think he is, he's certainly a Hall of Famer. But would I take a lot of assets, particularly young assets, or throw a ton of draft picks to get him? It'd have to be the exact right situation. So, no, I'm not heartbroken. From what I've heard from my contacts down in the Twin Cities, the Wolves aren't heartbroken either. They made their pitch. It didn't get accepted. And I think what they got, they feel better about. And you know what? They need him because they turned around and lay an egg last night against a woeful Pelicans team at home. with their best players playing pretty well. So the Wolves need some help to be, I think, a serious contender to get back at least to the Western Conference Finals this year.
Do you think they have it in them?
Well, Mike Conley's coming back.
Yeah,
so,
I was about to say.
Yeah, you know what? Do I think the Wolves have it in them? Yeah,
this year.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do, especially now with Dosunmu coming in. I think that if I could use that term surgical again, I would use that term and say that's a good surgical acquisition. Big, long, athletic. What they haven't had, it takes DiVincenzo out of a primary starting spot, which he really isn't suited for, to be a guy that you can rely on night in and night out to give you a certain amount of offense, because he's the kind of guy who'll give you 22 one night and the next 4 nights give you 6 to 8. So he's just not that kind of player. Tough, hard-nosed, great bench player. And that lack of depth, I think, is where the Wolves are the most vulnerable. So I don't want to just focus on them, though. I think the best acquisition, and I watched it last night myself, the most intriguing, there's 2 intriguing acquisitions, the Cavs and the Jazz. And by the way, Ben Golliver and I really go into depth, particularly on the Cavs. Jazz I like just because it's so weird. Jaren Jackson Jr. going to the Utah Jazz just is a weird pick. But I think the team that really won are the Celtics.
I agree.
Watching him last night, Vucevic is a beautiful fit. He does exactly what they need. He sets tremendous screens. His old school slips to the basket, his ability to finish around the rim, 11 points, 12 boards, 4 assists, plugs up the middle, good rim protector, depth at a position where they're weak at. They have surprised everybody, I think, with their performance this year. There's still the rumblings that Tatum might come back. I wouldn't be shocked, honestly, to see Jason Tatum in the playoffs, but I think the Celtics were the big winner myself.
Interesting.
And on that note, though, I just want, what are the Chicago Bulls thinking now and for the long term making these types of moves?
Because I draft 14 Nikola Jokic's. What are we talking about here?
Right? Doesn't that seem like the only way out of this kind of cycle that they've been in? Because I thought some of the trades, again, I thought the Celtics made an incredible trade with getting Vucevic, but I don't know if it makes sense for the Bulls. And I guess I'm not seeing it in the same way because I felt like they'd waited too long to trade Vucevic. I think they'd waited too long to trade Kobe White.
Who is now being traded for one less second-round pick, by the way, because he failed his physical. So it got amended to get now two second-round picks.
So it's like, right, some of the decisions I feel like that they have made, does this actually set you up for success? Obviously not now, but in the next 2-3 years. And I just haven't seen it that way. And this feels, again, one of those moves in the East where the East is gettable, and you would think that more teams would be wanting to be in a position where you have a win now window, and that's what the Cavs did. That's why I think I'm going to lean that way.
And you know what? To me, it's real close because I think there's a strong case to be made for James Harden being the most impactful acquisition in this trade.
Yeah, tough to agree. Like if I was voting just based off the poll, I would say Cavs. But honestly, I think the best move made of the entire time was the Indiana Pacers getting Ivica Zubac.
I think you know what? That's a longer term call, but I think you could end up being right. About that. That's a big acquisition. That's a big move. I know the Pacers have been woeful this year, but if Halliburton comes back and he is the Tyrese Halliburton he was with this acquisition with Zubac there, that could be a difference maker.
Yeah, and they got off Benedict Mathurin, who they knew they weren't extending, so they get rid of him.
Mathurin's an acquired taste. Like for me, I like I know he's Canadian. Yay, but I think you got to look at the inconsistency. The thing about him that drives me nuts is, again, you just don't know what you're going to get night in and night out. And he's young, and he's got a tremendous upside. So I think it's a great move for everybody to solidify the middle and give somebody else the project. I think that's a great move.
You replace Miles Turner with someone that is better than Miles Turner.
Oh, I know.
And you get rid of a guy who, again, is in that same vein as Dosunmu, as you said. And like it was just a winning move, and it was a small one. They didn't have to give up that much. The pick that they gave up is top 4 protected, and then like top 10 to 30. So if they land anywhere in that 5 to 9 range, then the Clippers get the first round pick this year. But I don't think they will. I think they're going to end up with a top 3 pick or whatever. And this is just such a unique situation for the Pacers. Like, this couldn't work out any better for them because this is a loaded draft. As you've talked about with our NCAA guests, is like there's a lot coming into the NBA this year.
100%.
So they're going to be poised to make another run. And if you get a guy that is as good as Tyrese Halliburton or will be as good as Tyrese Halliburton by the time of the end of the season, like I don't see why the Pacers wouldn't be a first seed and someone that, again, could challenge the Goliath that is the Oklahoma City Thunder when they probably meet up again in 2 years.
Now you're ahead of yourself, Josh.
I agree. But like this is a big trade.
That would be a great prediction for somebody that lived in Indianapolis. That to me is a perfect prediction.
Oh yeah.
The sun's going to shine bright again. But you're right, and it could be because they did surprise everybody last year. Manish, you look like you have something you want to say.
Well, I just don't. I like the move from the Pacers' perspective, but again, like it's one of those things. Like, why is this being made now? I just don't love the move for them in this current time or for the next couple of years. I think you want to hold on to your picks, and that's just because I think that you have a real chance with the core that you have to build from the draft and continue to get better instead of bringing in talent from outside. Now, I will say the center market is dry. Zoo and at the top of it.
You just
Right.
you just presented the answer. You're right. Everything you said leading up to it was correct, but the bottom line is there are very few good centers, and if there's a huge amount of versatile talent in the draft, there's not a lot of talent in this as pure centers, post players who can play defense, protect the rim, and step outside and score inside. That's where the draft is a bit weak.
And I think if you are in the Western Conference, you're happy that Zoo's out.
100%.
Because he was one of those players that played well against Gobert, played well against
yes, he did. He did
LP
really well.
In Houston. He played well against the Joker. So it's like you're happy that he's out because he presented some problems, especially for the Lakers as well, right? Like he just did a number on DeAndre Ayton, which, by the way, is kind of happening.
That's not saying.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's kind of happening a lot more
That
often.
never happens.
Yeah, it's kind of happening a lot more, which a lot of people did predict. But going back to the Cavs just for a second, I think that was the move that they needed to make because the Garland and Donovan Mitchell thing, we'd already seen that story before with CJ and Dame Lillard. It doesn't work because you don't have enough perimeter defense, right? And I just felt...
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're not going to
James
get
Harden
that with
fixes
Harden.
perimeter defense.
Yeah, but James Harden, like...
He's
savvy with his defense. The older he's gotten, I think that
So is savvy mean that you? I'm not sure.
Like he doesn't have to play this. Like he doesn't have to play like technique sound, but he's good with his hands. He gets a lot of deflections. And then you have a defensive player of the year behind him now, right? Like it's like they had to make this because of those decisions as well.
I agree with everything you said, except about anything relating to Harden's defense. The thing he does do, he reminds me when I coached little kids, what you used to call mini boys, under 11, we had a lot of guys that floated in the lane and would get deflections because kids weren't very sound fundamentally. That's how James Harden plays defense now. He is, by metrics, the slowest defender in the NBA, like by the metrics. And I'm not a metrics guy, but I thought that was one that jumped out at me. But what he does do with having the defensive player of the year behind him, I agree. But the thing he brings is that ability to find players in the spots that they need to get the ball in and get them the ball at the right time in the right spot. And that didn't happen with Garland.
Is he going to be a better defender than Darius Garland, though?
No.
I think so.
No.
But that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that doesn't matter. That's not the point. He is not there for his defense.
Yeah, he's there to also, like, I don't know who's going to be happier for the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell, that he doesn't have to score all the time and play point guard and be that player who is kind of not what his position and where
Again,
he's
he was
excelled.
only playing point guard, though, because Darius Garland was hurt.
Right, that's what I mean. So, like, I think he's going to be very, very happy with the James Harden thing. But I think it's the bigs, right? Like, James Harden,
he's going to make them better.
Right, every place he's been, the one thing you can count on is that the bigs are going to play exceptionally better. And hopefully that is the case, and we can kind of see the Cavs make a run. But it's going to be tough. I mean, that top of the East is still looking really good. I mean, the Detroit Pistons yesterday.
Yeah, there's an asterisk because the Knicks were so hurt with Anunoby and Towns out. But yeah, that was a statement game. But I think, a couple of times a year you're going to get blown out. This was the Knicks' time. Is it a sign of something more systemic or a weakness? I don't know. I'm not a buyer on the Knicks in terms of being the best in the East. Ben Golliver is, but I'm not. I'm not a buyer on the Celtics yet. I'm not sure who. I'm curious to see how things unfold with the Cavs. Oh, by the way, I want to run with this just for a second. I do want to run the NBA legend request again. What NBA legend do you want us to talk about in the last segment of the show today? So you got to send it into our 1-833-401-1440 line. 833-401-1440. Text us with who you want to see. Last week, I didn't realize Cale Schofield was the winner, and Cale is the on-court voice of the Edmonton Stingers.
Oh, nice.
He's worth the price of admission anytime just to get there. So, Cale, thanks so much. I didn't realize it was you. Hope you got your T-shirt. If you didn't, let me know next week. But I think like last night, for instance, just seeing some of the early returns on the trades. I watched the Celtics on a major comeback. They were down 21 at half, came back 1-2 over the Miami Heat. Zubac, like I said, nice fit, had good play from Pritchard, from, of course, Jaylen Brown. Nick slapped by the Pistons, like you mentioned, Manesh. And then also I fell asleep watching the Clippers and the Kings. It was just absolutely dreadful. Hard to recognize anybody, and the names that you recognize aren't very good, with the exception of Kawhi Leonard. So, but I do, before we get to Doug, okay, Manesh, you got something?
I was just going to ask, what constitutes as a legend that we're going to talk about?
Not playing in the league.
No, that's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Not playing in the league anymore.
Just for everybody that's texting in, wanted to, okay.
Yeah. We had Steph Curry. We made it. We did the Steph Curry.
Yeah.
But that we are going to an ex-NBA player who you regard as a legend, and maybe not as a legend for the reason of being one of the greatest ever, but contributing in a unique way. And we talked about Charles Barkley last week. I mean, he's a legend, but he contributed to the league and continues to contribute to the league in a very unique way. I don't send out many X posts, but I did send out one this week. I was so intrigued because I saw highlights of Shaq against David Robinson. And my title of the when the bigs roamed the court, because when you watch the highlights of these two guys playing, it looks like from a different planet than the league that you see today. Like these two guys, and then you can always hear, they couldn't play today, it's small ball. Bull crap. They absolutely could and would dominate and would be very effective in the league today. So look forward. Again, 833-401-1440. So I wanted to make one comment about what you were saying, Manesh, about Chicago. I had a good line. I do a blog every week, and I sent it out late this week because of the trade deadline. But I thought I had a good comment on the Bulls. They have more guards than King Charles has at Buckingham Palace, because you've got like two big guys, one of which is hurt, and the rest are a bunch of 6'3", 6'4" guards.
Yeah. To
your point, I don't know that they have a plan in Chicago other than they're doing stuff. It seems like it seems like an impulsive style. Certainly not a methodology. Now, out of it, if they're able to trade some of these pieces, which, by the way, are underwhelming in some cases, then it'll be interesting to see whether or not they're able to bring in some bigger, longer, more athletic, more versatile players. But it just seems they're so committed to change that it strikes me that Chicago is making change for the sake of making change.
And everybody talking about, getting draft picks and acquiring capital in the draft and things like that. You have to hit on those draft picks for you to ever be good. I don't think people quite understand that is not something that continuously happens in the NBA.
But this, and we'll go to break after this, and we'll do the 3+1 in the last segment, Josh.
Works for me.
But the NBA, it's OKC's good. Everybody tries to be like OKC. 30 years ago, a European player is good. Everybody drafts Europeans. Mm-hmm. Kevin Garnett and Kobe Bryant are good coming out of high school. Everybody drafts high school kids. How many other high school kids other than Kobe Bryant and Kevin Garnett came directly from high school? Moses Malone before, but he went to the ABA, which, by the way, is exciting as hell because there's an ABA special coming out.
Nice.
It's going to be unreal. I can't tell you how excited I am about that. But that's the way the NBA functions. So now everybody's thinking, blow it up, make strategic change, let's be surgical. Yeah, you got to be lucky.
You got to be lucky.
And the best example of luck is Dallas. My God, you've got the biggest idiot in the history of the game, Nico Harrison. History of management. Makes the worst trade of all time in any sport.
But defense wins championships.
Doesn't matter, dude. It's Luka Doncic.
It's only one reason they have a shot at relevancy. Yeah, defense wins championship if you're an idiot and you trade away the best player, one of the best players. Like that. Yeah, axioms like that make no sense if you don't have the players to back it up. So I think that that's what that's what fires me up about what's going on right now is everybody's hurting in this direction of surgical, strategic, long-term culture, all the buzzwords. You got to get the players. Look at Sacramento. 3 years ago, they're a playoff team. Now they're a train wreck.
You remember Light the Beam was going crazy at that time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Listen,
now they're a train wreck.
That was an example of luck. The Kings were bad, and then they had a season where they were good, and they made the stupidest decision in their franchise's history, which was trading away Tyrese Halliburton, and guess what? They're bad again.
They're horrible.
It's just the way it is.
Just the way it works out. Who would have thought Halliburton would be the player he is? Just like, my God, who would have thought SGA would be the player he is?
Not the Clippers.
Not the Clippers.
Actually, maybe. There was a lot of us that did.
Not as much, but.
Wildest dream, I never thought he was MVP.
No.
I thought he'd be good. Yeah. I didn't think he'd be like this, like epic, generational, that type of player. So.
Yeah, but that's what I like. Just to kind of wrap it up in a bow, it's like not every decision that is being made by NBA front offices and things like that are good.
90% of them aren't. So let's go with that,
right?
So you had the 90% that aren't good, or are questionable, or are marginal, or are risky, with 10% of them being great, and then that center that you really have a hard time putting a percentage on of luck. Luck of the draw, Mavs get Cooper Flagg. Mm-hmm. I mean, those sorts of things. Orlando, luck of the draw, gets 2 number 1 draft picks and get Penny Hardaway and Shaq. When the Timberwolves sucked worse than anybody in the world. That's but that's just you're so right. Nesh, thanks so much for being with us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So Josh and I are going to take a break. Remember, text in 833-401-1440 who you want for the NBA legend for our discussion. If you win, you get a T-shirt. We'll ship it out to you next week. And we're going to come back with Doug McLean as our community champion here on Hoop City on Sports 1440. My playlist, Paul's playlist I posted last night, it's what I would call unique hits of 1968.
Yeah, I might have seen that on our little lineup here today and went, oh boy, this is going to be a day. I tell you what.
1968 was a great year, but one of the things I wanted to do was to bring some of the songs from that era that you don't really hear that often. And Sly and the Family Stone, of course, are very, very popular. People have heard a lot of their music, but I don't think you've heard a lot of Iron Butterfly, and that's going to be the lead into the next one. But most importantly, let's get to our community champion of the day. Now, first of all, I got to find this on here before we get to Doug. There we go. This is our community champion. It's sponsored by Innovative Benefits. If it's time for you to review your company benefits, personal insurance plans, or investment strategies, talk to Randy Parrish and his team at Innovative Benefits. They will give you straightforward and honest advice with access to the best products in the industry. Trust the great folks at Innovative Benefits to do what's best for you, your family, and your business. To find out more, go to innovativebenefits.ca. Doug McLean. Doug has hosted our show. Doug has been on as a guest. Doug is a huge figure in the sports community. He's the voice of the Pandas and the Bears on the football field, on the basketball court. He works for Fishu. He does 3x3. And, of course, I have the privilege of working alongside Doug for these many years with the Edmonton Stingers. And I welcome Doug in as our community champion today. How are you today, Doug?
I'm awesome, Paul. How are you?
Great. It's great to have you on. And thanks for making time.
My pleasure.
So why don't we start with the teams that you do the work for right now? That, of course, are the University of Alberta Pandas and Bears. Last night, I believe both teams won. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Pandas with a 20-point win, 65-45 over Lethbridge, and the Bears an 86-69 win over the Pronghorns.
Okay. So, Doug, now we had a unique situation in Canada West. After the new year, or at the end of the first session, there were 4 teams, I believe, in Canada West that were undefeated. Regina, Saskatchewan, the Pandas, and was it Calgary?
Calgary, on the women's side. Yep.
On the women's side. Now, the Pandas squared off against the number 1 ranked undefeated University of Saskatchewan, Lisa Tomaitis-led Huskies. Lost 2 very, very tight games. Really had a shot in both games, it looked like, to win, but fell a little bit short. But now going down to Calgary last weekend, they dropped 2 as well. Would you, from your vantage point, regard that as a bit of a surprise and a bit of a disappointment to drop both to a good Dinos team? But did you think that this was going to be the outcome, that the Pandas would be in a position where they would drop both to the Dinos?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, like you said, all 4 of those teams 4-0 or 10-0 rather coming through into the Christmas break. All those teams had played respectfully lesser competition, so it was really hard to gauge where everybody was at. As you said, Pandas come out of the break, they play Saskatchewan, play them really well, and then all 4 of these teams are playing each other over the course of the month. It was whoever designed the schedule, well done. That was pretty impressive. And I would have thought, honestly, that maybe worst case scenario for the Pandas in that 6-game stretch, they'd go 500, 3-3. They ended up going 1-5. And certainly the Calgary games coming off, they lost to Regina the week prior on the road in Regina, lost on the Friday. Were down on the Saturday, had a huge fourth quarter comeback and won. I thought, okay, that's a really good sign against a good Regina team. Underlying numbers for Calgary relative to the rest of the conference, not as strong as those other 3, as Alberta, Saskatchewan, Regina. And the Pandas, Friday night, they scored 15 points in the first half. They just offensively is just slipped away. And even last night, they in the third quarter, for a good stretch of the third quarter, they were shooting under 6% from the field. They're just offensively right now, it's not there. And I think that led to those couple losses last week against the Dinos. And they played well enough last night to win against Lethbridge, but it's not going to work going forward. They've got to find some answers, especially the offensive end. So to answer your question, yes, surprised, but it has been a bit of a struggle the last few weeks.
Well, what's interesting, Doug, and we've had Scott Edwards, the great coach for the Pandas, on, and the Pandas really were rolling offensively. They were very good defensively, but offensively, they really seemed to have their groove. But from all of the basketball that you've played, coached, and called, that when there's something that can happen to a team, and it can be chemistry, it can be confidence, and most likely and most often it's a combination of both of those factors. But when that goes south, you start thinking about what you're doing offensively in particular. That's a dangerous place to be, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's funny, even last night, I mean, they were getting good looks all night long. I mean, Lethbridge played well. Lethbridge is, they're a team that's going to be competitive. They're good. They're quick. They play a similar style to the Pandas. They're all over you defensively. They're not big, but they do a good job getting hands on balls and hands in passing lanes. Did a good job of that. But the Pandas still had looks last night. And, you could just tell watching them, it's I'm going to put this shot up, and I hope it's going in.
Right.
I hope it's going in. I hope, if not, it's going to go to someone on an offensive board. And that was kind of how they looked. And you know that, having played and coached. I mean, you can't play that way. You have to shoot as if that thing's going down. I don't care what's going on. It's going down. And they're just uncharacteristically missing easy looks. They're rushing shots, and they finally settled down late in the third quarter and got themselves rolling into the fourth. I thought that was important. I mean, they were going to win that game, with all respect, almost no matter what. They're just a better team than Lethbridge. Let's just be honest. They're better. They were going to win that game. They're just too good defensively to give Lethbridge enough to win that game. But I think it was positive for the Pandas to wrestle things back a little bit offensively into the fourth quarter, find some rhythm that hopefully they can start to build into tonight, because you're 100% right. They lost Reese Hall against Saskatchewan. That's been a big loss because she does so much. She stretches the floor. She can put the ball on the floor. She's one of their best rebounders. And while they've added, McKinley Peninga out of Red Deer has been really good stepping into that role. She's a second-year player. There are going to be some ups and downs, but she's been really good, but maybe isn't quite ready for playing 25, 28 minutes a night. So they miss Reese Hall a ton. I'm not saying that's the whole reason things have gone the way they've gone this month, but so there's your chemistry angle that you mentioned. But I think it's right now, I think it's more a confidence thing than a chemistry thing. They're deep enough, to me, as much as Reese Hall is important, they're deep enough to withstand a loss like that. The confidence piece is a different story.
Well, and I think you hit on what needs to happen and to be carried forward into today's game, and that is continuing to push, continuing to find the kind of chemistry you're looking for, and then look for and hope for and find your belief in yourselves that when you work to get open shots, and like you're saying, Doug, they're getting open shots. It's not shot availability. It's not opponents taking away opportunities. It's when you have those opportunities, having the confidence to knock them down. So I know Scott is very, very good at the psychology side of coaching, and he will be. I know he's working extremely hard, and hopefully tonight will be another step forward, because one of the big drawbacks to what has happened with the Pandas is now all of a sudden they don't get home court advantage in the playoffs. Correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So the way, for those unfamiliar, the way that Canada West has designed their playoff system this year is essentially it rotates. So this year, the top spot will go to the first place team in the Pacific Division. Second seed goes to the first place team in the Prairie Division. That's going to be Saskatchewan. Because Alberta's locked into fourth in the Prairie, they're going to end up with the 8th seed. And the path is going to be challenging no matter what. They're going to be on the road. They're going to go next week, and it's still to be determined who they'll play in that play-in game. It's going to be – I'm just looking at my notes here quickly because I was doing that this morning, because there's still a lot of stuff that can change. It's UVic or Fraser Valley. They'll play in Vancouver. Winner of that will get UBC. So that's not going to be easy.
No. The
path would wind through Regina, so they would avoid – if they can go on a run, they would avoid Saskatchewan until the Canada West final, which I think is important. Again, they did beat Regina. That's a long ways down the road. Obviously, they got to get through a couple teams out west first. But look, this team is really good. Like, they are really good. I think it's one of, if not the best team that Scott's had. And it's come a little bit undone the last few weeks. But they got 5 seniors. We had 3 of them on last night. We're going to get the other 2 tonight. And Jaden Tanner, one of their 5th-year players, said, look, like, they know they haven't been great the last few weeks, but they also have a really strong belief in what they're capable of doing. So you can't count them out yet. Despite the struggles the last 4 weeks, they can still get on a run and in my mind, win the whole thing.
I'm talking with our community champion of the week, Doug McLean, voice of the Pandas and the Bears and the Stingers and a whole bunch of other teams as well, here on Hoop City with Paul Sir and Josh Fenwick. Doug, Bears, you and I have talked before. for all intents and purposes, it would seem like the University of Alberta Golden Bears have exceeded expectations this year. How are they playing right now as they get set up for the playoffs? And by the way, they will get home court advantage because of the excellent season that they've had.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I would say if you'd have told me that one team would be hosting a playoff round at the end of the year, it would have been, well, the Pandas, of course, for sure. The Bears are going to be decent, but they're young. They're a bit inexperienced. We'll see where they go. I mean, they're 14-5 right now. They're up and down. I mean, they've split each of their last 4 weekend series, so they try to avoid that trend tonight and see if they can get a win to sweep Lethbridge. And even last night, I mean, it's 35-all at halftime, and they're all over the place after a 10-0 run to start the game. So it's up, it's down, it's up and down. The second half, though, I thought they really started to find their game in the kind of matchup they had against Lethbridge. Lethbridge, not a big team. Alberta blessed with some size. We don't see that as much in basketball anywhere, certainly in Canada West, where they have 4 posts who are legitimate. Well, 3 are legitimate 5s. 1 can play there, but Ethan Eggert plays more of a 4. But they've got some size. And the first half, I kept saying on the broadcast, they got to get the ball inside, get the touches inside. Even if that's not where you get your final look, get the ball in there. Lethbridge does not have the bodies to handle it. Finally, in the second half, they started putting the ball inside, and they're getting looks from the outside because of those paint touches. And so I thought they finally started to say, oh, this is how, again, in this matchup, this is how we win. And they were outstanding in the second half. So they have that capability in them. It disappears in stretches, but they found it last night in the second half and just blew the doors off in the final 20.
Well, and as the saying goes, youth is wasted on the young. They're a young team, and they're learning as they go. But the fact that they learned through the course of the game, never mind through the course of a very successful season, that the Bears, it's exciting to see a young team under a first-year coach have the kind of success they have, and hopefully will be well prepared as they host their first playoff game. And would that be next weekend, Doug? And if so, who would it possibly be against?
Yeah, so there's still, again, even on the men's side, I'm trying to just 100% confirm that everything is locked in, because initially they needed to sweep this weekend, but with the way things happened last night, it appears, again, I was doing this prep before I came on with you, so I'm 99% sure that they have clinched that playoff spot, so just to put that out there. But if they were to finish second, time's yet to be determined. It would be Friday, Saturday. They got to match that off with volleyball going on too, so not exactly sure what the timing would be. And again, as I was looking here, Brandon and Regina are still bad. They're both in the playoffs, but battling for the final positioning. So either Brandon or Regina would be here, as well as Fraser Valley.
Okay.
The winner of that game on the Friday would get the Bears on Saturday.
Okay. Exciting. So people will be able to watch some great basketball and volleyball. Now go to the basketball, not the I'm just kidding. I always say the most depressing place for a basketball coach to go is a volleyball practice. To go in and see all these tall guys and men and women, boys and girls jumping out of the gym. But that's for another time. Doug, we're going to take a break right now. We'll come back for our next segment with you. We'll talk about the Stingers. We're going to talk about an announcement in the CEBL, and we're going to talk more about Doug McLean. You're listening to Hoop City with Paul Sir, along with the great Josh Fenwick here on your Sports Leader, Sports 1440. Paul Sir, Josh Fenwick being joined by our community champion, Doug McLean today. Doug, I have to talk a little bit about the song that just led in. Number one hit wonder, Iron Butterfly. Number 2, it's the album sold 3 million copies worldwide. It's like 6 times platinum. What made it unique in 1968 is it was 17 minutes long. Inagata Davida is the name. Nobody really understands, of course, what the title meant other than the way that the writer talked about it, something about falling in love. But it was a rage at the time, as you can imagine, because it was so weird. Like 17 minutes, drum solo, heavy metal guitar. But just an absolutely, it's one of those songs that if you listen to, you'll never get those 17 minutes back. Uh, I can't say I'm recommending it because it's a great song. It's just a unique song and a unique moment in music history. So back with Doug McLean. Doug, let's jump over to the CEBL. We'll start with the CEBL before we go to the Stingers. CEBL makes the announcement this week that the Saskatchewan Rattlers are now the Saskatchewan Mamba. New logo, new owners. The new owners are also the owners of the Calgary Surge. Definitely a new chapter in the CEBL. I'm gonna keep what the direction of where our conversation could go pretty open. What are your thoughts on this announcement?
Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure, and they've been hinting at it for a bunch of weeks. I think they were calling themselves the Saskatchewan Professional Basketball Club for a bit, and it's actually and I didn't realize this myself until after the announcement. It's the Saskatoon Mamba. So that's interesting too.
Okay,
yeah,
I missed that. I just saw Mamba.
Yeah.
Okay, Saskatoon Mamba. Okay.
Yeah, and so that's interesting in the sense of, are they looking at? I mean, is Regina now in consideration as a potential franchise? I have no idea, but that was an interesting little subtle thing about it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm a marketing guy. That's my background. To me, sometimes you can do things for the sake of doing them, and I'm not really sure that it fixes some of the challenges that you have. I mean, they had a really good first year, did the Rattlers, winning the CEBL championship. They have not been very good since. I'm not sure changing your logo and your colors is going to fix that necessarily, but who knows? I mean, that might shift things, but we'll see. So it's on the business side, it's interesting. I mean, pink, again, I'm not the target market, so I'm not sure that it's the color that makes sense. But again, I'm not the guy they're trying to go after. So, but hey, they got to improve things on the floor. They have to be a more competitive franchise, because they have not been competitive, frankly, at all. It's usually a pretty winnable spot on the bingo card when they come rolling through town. So that's got to change. Interesting having one set of owners with two teams. I mean, obviously the league owned all the franchises at one point, and they've been slowly parsing them off. I mean, that can be challenging. We saw that in the Canadian Football League years ago with David Braley owning the Toronto Argonauts and the BC Lions. I don't know what it necessarily says about the business environment in the CEBL, whether that's good that people are interested or bad that there aren't enough people interested locally in Saskatchewan to buy and run the franchise. They're also going to play out of two venues, which is interesting. So they'll play at, and I'm forgetting the name. It used to be Saskatchewan Place. There's a new name, or which I'm forgetting now. Yeah. And then they're going to play on campus at the University of Saskatchewan, which is a relatively new, last decade, nice but smaller venue. So just some interesting things going on, I think, in terms of the operations side of it. But I keep coming back to, they have to be better on the floor in order to make any of this work.
Well, I think you summarized it really well, Doug. Number one, you can't have one without the other. You have to be competitive on the court to give people reasons to come and watch. And it's one thing to not be very good but be entertaining to watch. It's another thing to not be very good and hard to watch. And the Rattlers were hard to watch.
Yeah.
Now, I think that really came down to, and I'm not going to throw the coaches under the bus on this, I think the coaches really tried hard to do the best that they could with what they had to work with. But honestly, it was a very, very poorly constructed lineup over the past few seasons. So there wasn't much talent really to build around. Effort was fine. It's just they weren't very good. So you're right. They're going to have to be more compelling on the court. From a business operations standpoint, that is going to be interesting. I have some experience in this, but multiple venues, challenging. That's number one. But number two, I think, and this is based on people I know in Saskatoon, talking about the then Rattlers in their community. And just there never was a connection that was forged in that community, because as you know, Doug, Saskatchewan fans are very loyal if you get their hearts. And I don't think that the CEBL via the Rattlers ever got their hearts. So this new ownership group is going to have to do that. And there's no magic here. There's just hard work. and there's community involvement. So my question, and this is, I'd be very interested in your comments on this. My question is, to me, if I had to pick what the biggest challenge is, it's having not just an owner of another franchise, but an ownership group that doesn't live there. How are they going to ensure that community is engaged by assembling the kind of on-the-ground team that will do the necessary work in order to raise not just the profile, but raise the passion meter in Saskatoon to want to come and watch the now Mamba play?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, because I think Jason Ribeiro, one of the two owners of the Surge and now the Mamba, I think it is going to be a challenge when you're not in that market. They are based out of Calgary. When you're out there all the time, it is going to be different. And that doesn't mean you're an absentee owner. I mean, they might have a great plan in terms of how they're going to do this. We'll see how that rolls out. But I think you're right. Even if you're in that community in Saskatoon and you realize, okay, well, it's not a local owner, it's someone from the outside, that can create some inherent challenges, whether they're fair or not. That's a reality of having an owner that lives somewhere else. That we've seen that in sports all over the place, that can create some, oftentimes probably unfair, but it can create a bit of mistrust or uncertainty about where things are going to go. So you're right, they're going to have people on the ground that have very strong Saskatoon ties, that know the market, that know the people, that can work and be out in the community, engaging them. I mean, Saskatoon's not a big community, relatively speaking, but it's a really good sports community. I mean, they support amateur sports. I've seen that with the University of Saskatchewan for years. They support the Saskatoon Blades. The Saskatchewan Rush have gone in there after moving from Edmonton to the National Lacrosse League and have done quite well in what is at least a decade now of time there. So it's doable in a relatively small market. And the Rattlers are going to have to find, or the Mamba are going to have to find people on the ground that can do that. And but the other thing I think they have to think about, which maybe follows a bit of the Edmonton model, is finding players that are going to be there, that are prominent players on the floor, that are going to return year after year. And that's been part of the success, I think, here, is that the Stingers have done a good job of keeping players, and players that aren't just playing bit roles, they're key parts of the roster. And I think if you're looking at a 5-year plan for Saskatoon, it's got to include that. Who wants to be here, wants to stay here, wants to be part of this going forward? You have those two things in place, then you've got the potential, I think, to see a team grow and thrive.
Totally agree with you. I remember when the CEBL came into existence, one of the apprehensions in Saskatoon specifically, again through some people I know there, is that Saskatoon, as much as Winnipeg in particular, have been stung in the past by fledgling professional leagues in basketball. There were a couple of instances in Saskatchewan where they had pretty successful minor league basketball happening, only to have the league fold. And having been involved in one of those leagues, I know how it can create a sour taste in a community's mouth. For whatever reason, and I think, for the reasons you shared with me and that we've discussed, Doug, I think the Saskatoon approach has been wait and see. Let's see if these guys are for real. And so far, they haven't been, for the reasons we've discussed. So rebranding, I guess you gotta do it. Am I a fan of it? No, but hey, whatever. Maybe people will like purple and black. That's a nice color palette. Good for them. But we'll see. I mean, certainly we wish the CEBL well. And before we get into our final discussions, I do want to touch on the CEBL. The CEBL is evolving. And it has evolved really rather dramatically over the last 3 years, Doug, with the shift from corporate ownership of all franchises to expansion into new markets to now, I believe there's 2 corporate-owned teams, one in the Toronto area. I don't know if it's Brampton or not, and then Richard Petco, who also owns the Niagara franchise. But the rest are privately owned. So we now have a league of private owners. That leads to a whole bunch of different issues. You've got egos, you've got agendas, you've got all these things that professional sports are noted for, which I think Mr. Petco did a phenomenal job in making his commitment to the league in establishing their standards of what they wanted the league to look like. Now, not only do we have almost all private ownership, but the face, the voice, and the leadership figurehead of the league is no longer there. And that, of course, is Mike Morreale. Mike worked tirelessly in the lead up to the launch of the league and in the building of the league. And Mike is no longer there. And depending on who you talk to, the reasons he left can be looked at as, just passage of time for a new chapter, to really wasn't a great departure, didn't end well, that sort of thing. But with that kind of lead up, Doug, what are your thoughts about this? Let's just say the state of the league right now. Is it, well, let's see what this year brings, or is it a progression that you see going in a positive direction?
Oh,
isn't that tough?
That's a really good question. I think it's hard. It's always hard to know, I think, a little bit in some ways, because you never really see entirely what's under the hood. And even being connected, and I mean, I'm not in there every day with the Stingers, but I mean, you and I are there calling the games. You see what's happening around. I mean, you have a sense of what's going on. And, even if you look at the Stingers, it's not a huge team, so not a lot of people. They've done a good job, I think, of on the ticket sales side of things. For the most part, crowds have been pretty good, and it's not, from what I know, it's not, the house isn't being papered. Like it's legit sales for the most part. And I'm not sure that's what's happening across the league. I mean, you look at games and there are decent crowds in some places and not so much in others. But when you sort of sit back and think about the economics of it, you've got players coming in, they're not making big salaries, but they're decent enough. You got to find ways to pay that. You're, in some cases, depending on how contracts are structured, and you probably know this better with Steve's involvement, but there are other things that are being provided to the athletes, be it accommodations, be it car, whatever the case is, to support the players while they're in those respective markets. Those things all add up. You have to then find a way, and it can't often just be ticket sales to offset those costs. And that's just trying to get yourself in a position to break even, let alone put a little bit of money back in your pocket or to reinvest in the franchise. So with sponsorship being a tricky thing in the world right now anyway, with lots of economic uncertainty all over the place, that creates another layer of challenge. So it's a hard question to answer, because I think you look on the surface and you'd say, yeah, the league's great. I mean, as you said, they've expanded, ticket sales and crowds seem to be pretty decent for the most part, but it's the under the hood part that's hard to know franchise by franchise to know, okay, like we see Saskatoon now in 2 different buildings. That raises some flags for me. You see, I mean, we've had franchises in the last, not more as recently, but previously move. You had Newfoundland disappear. You've had Brampton end up there from Hamilton. So there's lots of things, and those things can happen in fledgling leagues, but you just you're never quite sure what's under the hood. And I think you raised the most important point, is that the anchor of all of this was Mike Morreale. And now with him being gone, how does that change in terms of how the teams respond to each other, how they work? Because you have to work collectively as a group of teams. You need to be looking at your own stuff, but also how is this building the league forward? So that what I've just said doesn't provide an answer, but I think those are some of the questions that I'd be pondering in terms of really understanding where this league's at. In my mind, it's done better than I thought it would, but can that continue? I think hopefully yes, but there are some questions.
I think there's lots of questions, and I think what you did is you provided the answer with the questions, Doug, because that is exactly what we have. We don't know. Mike's leaving is gaping. That's a gaping hole. That is the identity of the league that really one person provided. So the league has to replace that, maybe not in the same way with another big personality, but either in a similar way or a different way. They have to have a face, name, and an image that they're pushing forward. They have to progress in terms of how the league is marketed, the quality of what's on the court, the involvement in the community. And they have some inherent challenges in that it's a short season. It's during the summer. From a revenue generation standpoint, you have limitations of what you can do because you hit it on the head. It's ticket sales and sponsorships. That's where you're going to generate your money. So they have their challenges, and thank goodness we're 8 years into it. Hopefully they're figuring it out. Hopefully the Canadian broadcast community will get, I'd say, more steadfast behind this. My God, Sportsnet and TSN have 80 channels between them. Broadcast a bunch more games. What are you putting on there? 4 channels with the same broadcasts? Like, bring in some of the local broadcasts. I'm hoping the league will get a little more love from the broadcast community because, quite frankly, they deserve it. And honestly, I can't imagine you'd have worse numbers watching a CEBL game than some obscure sporting event that you're seeing on 4 channels. That's of course, my opinion. And as you know, Doug, I'm very opinionated, but
but you're right, and I think because of the growth of basketball in this country, I think there is just more general interest in the sport. But you hit on the points that I think are challenging in terms of it being short season, summer season. The other thing I would add too, that has been a bigger challenge, which is a good thing and a bad thing, is the players that come play part of the season and then vanish. And we saw that in the playoffs last year with Ottawa, where I think it was 4 or 5 of their players were gone. They had to release a statement to their fans saying, "Look, we apologize for the fact that that's a huge problem for the league." So if as a fan you can't sort of understand what my team is going to look like at the most important time of the season, that's a challenge. It's a good thing in the sense that it means they're attracting good players to the league, and we've seen that the quality of the product has been great. But that's another risk, I think, of the summer season part that they're going to have to address, because I think that the credibility piece did take a big hit, and it can continue to take a big hit if they don't close that loophole to some degree.
I think that's a critical point, that you do need reliability and you do need that sense of professionalism and identification with the team, the comings and goings. It's one thing to cut a player because they're not playing well. It's another thing to have a player just up and leave that is a major part of your team's success. So, lots of challenges ahead, but thank goodness we have the league here. And by the way, I can't say enough about the Stingers games in terms of entertainment value, atmosphere. The Stingers organization has done a marvelous and continues to do a marvelous job. Always worth the price of admission, and really hope people will get out and continue to support our local CEBL franchise. You're listening to Hoop City with Paul Sir, Josh Fenwick. We're going to spend a couple more minutes, Doug, but I want to talk about you. I've known you for a long time. Where did your passion for basketball emanate from? I know you played, but when did it start, and what has motivated and driven you into loving the game so much?
Oh, yeah. For me, growing up, I grew up in the Edmonton area in St. Albert, and basketball wasn't a huge thing when I was younger. Played a little bit. I had a really good gym teacher in elementary who got us playing all kinds of sports and sort of adaptive, 1 point if you hit the backboard, 2 if you hit the rim, 3 if you knock it through. So little things like that. But I didn't play a lot. My dad took me to the Golden Bears Invitational, I think in 1985-ish. And that's really what kind of got me into the university side and Canada West side. And then I owe a lot of credit to a really dear friend of mine, AJ Jakubek, who got me into the broadcasting stuff. He's now has been in Ottawa for many years, broadcasting there, doing the Ottawa Red Blacks games. We became friends in about grade 5, and he had a court in his backyard, and we were playing all the time. And that's really what kind of got me into it, because I'd never really played a lot before. And I got into it then and played in junior high. I was an extremely average high school player, but was fortunate to play with some good players on some good teams. And there weren't a lot of people in the university system looking for skinny backup point guards. So the career kind of wound up. But I've just been fortunate on the basketball side to be able to get pulled into lots of things. Like I said, AJ got me into doing the U of A games 25 years ago, and I've been lucky to do those ever since. And did a little bit of refereeing when I was younger, and got into coaching through my brother-in-law, who was coaching the high school system here in Edmonton, and did that with him and some on my own. And then, I've been able to work in different things sport-wise that have had connections to basketball too. So I've been really, really fortunate to touch on the sport in lots of different ways, and it's given me far more than I could ever give back. But I've been pretty lucky to be connected to it.
Well, Doug, I would contest that last statement. You've given an awful lot back to the sport, certainly a lot back to the community, and you've done a lot for organizations, not just on the court, but as I mentioned in my opening introductory remarks, you've done a lot for organizations that work in sport in general and in basketball specifically. So thank you for all that you do. You are a very deserving community champion, and thanks so much for joining me today on Hoop City, and look forward. You'll be back, I know, again to talk about the Canada West playoffs, the Stingers, and much, much more. But Doug McLean, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks, Paul, and thanks for the very kind words. That's very nice of you, and loved working with you on the various things we've worked on, and happy to come on the show anytime you need me.
Okay, Doug McLean joining us here. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, it'll be a conversation I had yesterday with Ben Golliver about the NBA trades, and this is our deep dive. And as we do every week, we go into the weeds, and there's some great conversation ahead. You're listening to Hoop City with Paul Sir, along with Josh Fenwick, here on your sports leader, Sports 1440.